Today we have Deborah Biddle. So, with a calm, level-headed approach, keen listening, insightful questioning, and a passion for individual and organizational belonging and thriving, Deborah Biddle influences individuals and teams to successfully rethink and redo the way they engage with people and make decisions. Deborah runs a diversity, inclusion, consulting, coaching, and training firm, The People Company LLC. She works with organizations who want to leverage the power of change to heighten development and performance for their people. Deborah designs and delivers thought-provoking and challenging experiences that help people think better, do better, and be better at what matters most. Please help me welcome Deborah Biddle.
Hi. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, and thank you for taking time out of your day to be here. I'm excited to talk about emotional intelligence. It's one of my favorite topics. It's because it's interesting and it applies to everyone, and I think there's something in it that everyone can learn as we go through defining what it is, listing out strategies. I think you may see yourself or at least someone else you know in our conversation as we go, and there's a lot to learn. So we're gonna just jump right in. When you think about emotional intelligence and think about who you are, it's bigger than just your own perception of yourself. It's how others see you. And sometimes how we think about ourselves doesn't line up with the experience that other people have. So emotional intelligence helps us get to the bottom of that. It helps us become more aware so that we can be more effective with the people that we engage with. One of the things that I have asked myself as I've worked in different organizations is, why is it that some people in the organization seem to succeed or advance more quickly than other folks, namely me? And so when I've been in, I used to work for 3 different Fortune 100 companies. I worked in accounting and finance and was very successful in my career, but there was always a few people who were smart, but I felt weren't as smart as me. And they worked hard, but I didn't think they worked as hard as I did. And sometimes they were, just not the sharpest knife in the drawer. And they seemed to advance a little bit faster than I did. And I always wondered, is it because of the way I look? Is it because I'm Black? Is it because I'm female? Is it because I'm not, a size 10? And when I think about it, it could have been some of that. It might have been none of that. But one thing is for sure, it probably had something to do with my own lack of emotional intelligence. I have a tendency, when I think something is unfair or unjust, to charge in on it and say what needs to be said, or at least what I think needs to be said. And I think that sometimes that rubs people the wrong way. And I've learned over the years, because that career was a long time ago, but I've learned over the years how to win more friends and influence people in ways that don't deter them, and ways that draw them in. And so I hope that as we go through this, you might experience some of the same revelations that I had about understanding why certain things happen for others and may not happen for you, or you see it happen in other people's lives, maybe not your own. Another thing, Charles Swindoll is a writer and speaker and pastor, and one of the things that he said is that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And that is a great statement to kind of capsulize what unconscious bias is all about. We have a tendency, when someone does something to us, or someone close that we love, or they attack a project we've worked on, we have some emotional response to that, and sometimes it's inappropriate for the situation. Have you ever had, any of you parents here? Okay, so for those of you who are parents, has your child ever done something and you came in and saw it and you just blew a gasket, you yelled and screamed at them to the point where the next time something happens, they're not going to tell you about it, they're not going to come anywhere near you because you've lost your mind? And those of you who don't have kids, have you ever been in the workplace, whether it was your employee or a coworker, and someone did something that just made you go crazy? And if you're leading a team and you have that experience and you go off the handle or you embarrass them in front of other people, you can bet they're not going to want to be around you or trust you to have a calm conversation with them in the future. So being aware of your emotions becomes really important in those instances. So emotional intelligence first came about in terms of being really popular in mainstream culture in 1995 when Time magazine covered a story about Daniel Goleman. He was considered the father of emotional intelligence. He wrote a book about it, and his book was, at that time, labeled as one of the 25 most influential business books. And he talked about emotional intelligence, and that's what kind of laid our foundation for it. People became fascinated by the idea that you didn't necessarily have to be the smartest person in the room in order to be the most successful. Emotional intelligence is that what some people will call the missing link. Studies have shown, part of Daniel Goleman's work and others' work, have shown that about 20% of the smartest people in the room are more successful than those with average emotional intelligence, but 70% of people who have high emotional intelligence are more successful than those with average intelligence. And so intelligence is no longer viewed as the one thing that makes us successful like it had been in the past. It's really about your emotional intelligence and how you use it to influence people, to manage relationships, and to be successful in your life. So the definition, a simple definition of emotional intelligence is just the ability to recognize your emotions and the emotions of other people, and then manage that in your interactions with them, and also help manage your response to some of the things that they may say or do, and as well see ahead of time what's going on, what might be happening with someone else, and how you will handle that situation. When scientifically what happens to us for emotional intelligence is or biologically, we have to manage how our emotions and our intellect and the stimulus that causes our reaction, we have to manage that whole process. When something happens to us, it starts in the spinal cord. So here in the back is where all of your interactions start. So what you see, what you hear, what you experience starts there. Then it goes to your limbic system, and that's what you feel. That's your emotional response area of your brain. Then it has travels all the way to your frontal lobe, which is where you think and you reason. So imagine someone comes in and gives you horrible news, and you're in a meeting at work. You have to have all of those experiences. It's a long way to travel before you can get to a rational response on something. So what you want to do is learn how to control that limbic area so that you don't react out of that space versus the more rational space when you need to. And that can be tricky for us. When we think about emotional intelligence or just our entire personality and all the various intelligence that we have, IQ is what most of us have grown up thinking is kind of central and core to our success in our lives. And IQ is just a measure of how well you learn. Most of us have taken some sort of IQ test at some point in our life. How well you learn is fixed. You either are going to be super smart and learn really quickly and really well, or you're not. And there's nothing good or bad about it. It just means you have to work differently in order to process information. Then you have your personality. Many of you may have taken, how many have taken a Myers-Briggs assessment? So a good number of you, or a DISC assessment, or a StrengthsFinder, or any number of those. So those have to do with your personality. And again, that is born out of your preference for a particular situation or not, or a given set of stimuli or not. And scientists believe, and sociologists and psychologists believe that that is fixed. It's not going to change. So if you take a personality test today, you take one 10 years from now, what your personality is in essence supposed to be the same if you answer those questions truthfully. But EQ, or emotional intelligence, or EI, as you will also see it, is the one area that you can actually change. You can learn how to control your emotions, learn how you respond to others' emotions, and make a difference. And so that is the one area of growth, and that's why we're here. We're talking about that so we can figure out how do we balance that, given our personality, given our intelligence, how are we going to balance emotional intelligence. And so when we think about emotional intelligence, it is the foundation for all of these other skills. When you talk about decision making or time management or presentation skills, whether it's customer service, they all lie heavily on the foundation of emotional intelligence. And that's what helps us to be successful in our lives. So we want to understand it and what it means for you so that we can make good choices about how we use our own emotional intelligence in our lives. With emotional intelligence, the research says that 90% of top performers have high emotional intelligence. 90%. So they may not be, they may not have graduated summa cum laude or be a Rhodes Scholar, but they will have very high emotional intelligence. When we look at job performance and we think about intellect and again, personality and all these other things, 58% of our job performance is based on our emotional intelligence. It is the one single biggest predictor of work performance for all of us. And it doesn't matter whether you're the janitor, whether you're the CEO, or anything in between. Emotional intelligence is going to predict how successful you are. So it's important for us to understand it. When it comes to income, if you're not motivated by those first two things, know that people who have the highest emotional intelligence make on average $29,000 more a year than those who don't. And then important to understand around that particular figure is that if you are able to increase your emotional intelligence by just 1 percentage point, that'll mean $1,300 a year more for you. So it's important if you're motivated by money, like I am. So that's something you want to pay attention to, especially in the mode that we're in right now. It used to be that people would hire for skill. If you had the basic qualifications, you went to school, you had experience, you were technically competent at whatever the job required, people would hire you more based on that than your personality. But in today's environment, people are looking for folks who can add to their work culture or add to their team environment, and they're looking for a personality fit, looking for people who have good emotional intelligence, who are able to think strategically, who have good cultural IQ. Those kinds of folks are the ones that people are tending to hire more and saying, we'll train you on the technical stuff because we believe you're smart and you get along in our environment. So it's really something to think about. If you're looking for a job, a lot of managers articulate this concept not this way, but they'll say, we really want someone who's going to add to our culture here. And when they say that, that means they're looking for the right emotional intelligence, the right personality type, and then saying, they're smart. We can train them because we have the technical ability here. So be aware of that too. People who have high emotional intelligence want more of that because they believe that emotional intelligence will help us understand the effect of emotions. So it's good for us to know how what I say and do, my body language, my facial expression, how all of that affects and impacts someone else. And then we use that information to help guide our thinking and our behavior. So it's not just some theoretical thing up in the atmosphere, but we're actually going to use that in terms of making decisions and interactions. If you're the kind of person that has a high degree of emotional intelligence, you know what you're feeling. Nobody has to tell you, you're really aware. People will probably tell you sometimes, well, that's a really enlightened perspective, or you seem to be really in control of your emotions. You may hear that from time to time. You're the kind of person who knows what emotions mean. So you're not going to always fly off the handle or experience these extremes in emotions, highs and lows, because you understand what your own emotions mean and how they impact others. You also know the effect to other people. And signs of high IQ. So if you're an open-minded person, willing to consider the possibilities, that may mean that you're a person with high emotional intelligence. If you're a good listener, so if you're the kind of person that isn't always trying to think of a response to something that someone is saying while they're talking to you, but you're actually engaged and you're not already making your counterpoint, you may have high emotional intelligence. If you're the kind of person that doesn't sugarcoat the truth, so you know how to speak to people, tell them the truth with kindness and love, and not be brutal when you talk to people, because you understand what that's like. You may have high emotional intelligence. If you're the person that will readily admit when you're wrong, you don't dance around it, you're not throwing somebody else under the bus, you're not trying to look good at the expense of everyone else, you admit the truth, then you're probably a person with high emotional intelligence. When it comes to low emotional intelligence, you don't have any self-awareness at all. How many of you know somebody like that, right? I do. I know some people like that, where no matter what happens, you just do not have a clue that you're offending people or walking all over people in meetings, that everybody else sees that you have a certain quality, but you can't see it for yourself. You may have low emotional intelligence. You have no empathy. So you're the kind of person, well, I'm just going to tell it like it is. I don't care whose feelings I hurt, because I know what's right and I am going to make it known. If that's you, you may have low emotional intelligence. You're oblivious to your own emotions and the emotions of others. So there could be someone literally crumbling in your midst. Their body language is closed off, they're trembling, there's a whimper in their voice when they're trying to communicate with you, but you don't see it, you don't care. You're just on your own agenda. You probably have low emotional intelligence. You're like a bull in a china shop. Again, you're just forging right ahead. You're on your mission to accomplish your goal, no matter what happens to anybody else. That might mean low emotional intelligence. You're the kind of person who lashes out just because you can't check your own self. So when you're upset, you lash out at everyone else. You're on Twitter saying things that need not be said. You're posting memes that need not be seen. So if that's you, low emotional intelligence. And then you find other people to blame for almost everything that happens in your own life, in your own workplace. It's never your fault. It's always someone else. You know some of those people? Okay, so low emotional intelligence there. So when you think about emotional intelligence, I would ask you to look at these two categories. It's really what you see and what you do. So how you manage your own self-awareness, social awareness, and then so being aware of how I come across and how I interact with others, and then what you do. Are you going to manage yourself, how well you manage yourself, and how you manage your relationships with other people? And then on the horizontal side, your personal competence comes in your self-awareness and self-management, and your social competence in social awareness and social management. So that is kind of a table look at what emotional intelligence is. And all of it, this is the one time you get to be the center of attention. It's all you and how you manage it and how you work through it. So today I'm going to give you some broad definitions of the self-awareness and social awareness pieces and self-management and relationship management, but I'm going to spend the bulk of our time talking about self-awareness and self-management, because if you don't get that piece, then the other piece is kind of a moot point. So we'll spend the bulk of our time there, and I'll define them, all four of them, for you really quickly before we jump into strategies. So the first one is personal competence, and that, like I said, consists of your self-awareness and self-management skills. When you're looking at self-awareness, it really is how well you accurately perceive and understand who you are and how your emotions are occurring throughout your day and your interactions with people, and what you might do to mitigate some of the things that take you off path. When you look at self-management, it's how well you can stay flexible and positive in the moment in order to direct your behavior in ways that are not inflammatory, but are more winsome in your interactions with others. For social competence, it's about your social awareness and relationship management skills. So when you look at social awareness, it's your ability to pick up on what other people are saying or not saying, doing, feeling. And so that requires you to be observant and really attuned to what's happening around you. And if you're really self-centered and you're not focused on managing the relationships by paying attention to both people or paying attention to what's happening in a room, then you'll miss out on those opportunities to be a high socially aware person. With relationship management, it's how you use your awareness of emotions of other people to manage and have a great interaction with folks. And when I say great, I don't necessarily mean that it's always positive, but an interaction that doesn't cause negative consequences. So even when you're giving tough information, you're still having a respectful interaction with other people. So the first category of things I want to look at are self-awareness strategies, and there are several that you can utilize, and these are just a few. There's a whole lot more. You may have some of your own that you might want to share with us to help us, but I'm going to give you, I don't know, 10 or so that work, that I've found that work. One of them is to stop categorizing your feelings as good or bad. That automatically sets you up for defeat. If you're always saying, well, this is a good thought, this is a negative thought, this is a good emotion, a bad emotion, you don't want to do that because feeling the emotion is important, and it's just an experience of emotion. It doesn't matter whether it's good or bad. You don't want to put a label on it for negativity. Just let the emotion be what it is so that you can decide how you're going to handle it. Noticing kind of the ripple effect of your emotions. I talked about earlier about blowing up at a child, or if you're in a meeting with colleagues and you have an overreaction, you want to make sure that you notice what the ripple effect of that is. Sometimes when, as a leader, if you go into a situation and you find yourself exploding or just your body language is very tense, people see that. And so the next time that your team, if they've witnessed that, they want to talk to you about something that might be sensitive, they're going to think twice about it because you've lost your mind or you've gotten really tense or your reaction was over the top. So they may not come to you when they need to, which means that work might slow down or be interrupted, or it might not be the best outcome because people are afraid of you or afraid of your reaction. So notice the ripple effect. Even if it's not you, pay attention to what happens when other people do it, because I'm sure you've seen it. I had a boss that used to come into meetings, and if somebody would say something, he'd pound on the table, then he'd start to yell. And I made up in my mind after the first time I saw him go off on somebody else that I was not going to have any kind of sensitive conversation with him because he was hostile, I thought. So be aware of that because it makes a difference in how people engage with you, and that then impacts your team dynamics and your effectiveness at work. Acknowledge and lean into your emotions. So when you have them, it's nothing to, don't try to stuff it. Sometimes we have emotional reactions, whether it's fear or joy, or whether it is pain or sorrow, deep sorrow. Don't ignore that. Actually lean into it. Ask yourself why you're feeling that way, what's causing that emotion. Notice what's happening to you in the moment. Try to understand it and deal with it rather than stuff it down and ignore it, because later on it's going to come out somewhere, somehow. And it might be years from now. It might be 2 days when someone does something that upsets you and then you have an over-the-top reaction. But try to pay attention and actually lean into the emotions that you have. And physically feel your emotions. The one kind of smiling, that's my oldest baby. He's not a baby anymore, though. He's 25 now, but that was when he was 18. And he usually doesn't express a whole lot of emotion, but at this particular game, they were playing in the semifinals, I think, against East High School, and he shot the winning shot. It was a three-pointer at the buzzer, and so it merited a little bit of emotion from him. And so what I will say to you about that is when you have emotions, pay attention to what happens to you, what goes on physically. Notice if you get hot or if you get flushed. Do your hands shake? Does your voice quiver? Do you get dry mouth, sick to your stomach? Do you just want to jump up and scream? What happens to you when you have emotions. Notice it, lean into it, and if it's a positive thing, if it causes you a lot of stress, it helps for you to pay attention to what it is, so then you can take some steps to calm yourself down. But if you don't pay attention, you don't know, so you can't manage it. So I would say lean into those emotions and analyze what is physically happening to you so that you can manage your emotional response. Know who pushes your buttons. I'm sure most of us have a person at work or in your life that just knows how to get at you. For me, it's not ever been a person at work, but in my personal life, I have an aunt who, I probably shouldn't say this because it's recorded, but I love her. Let me just say that I love her. But she has a tendency to, she knows just the right thing to say to just drive you crazy. Like, should you really be wearing that? Or you look a little heavier since the last time I saw you. And on and on and on. You have people you work with who might be the same way. People who might say, well, I saw you made a typo in that report. It's one typo. And they saw the one typo. And rather than say the report was great, they point out that one thing. So there may be people in your life who push your buttons. Know who they are. Know the situations that happens in. And then manage that. Prepare ahead of time. Like when I know I'm going to see this particular aunt, I gear myself up. I read some positive stuff. I say to myself, well, you know this is going to happen, so there's no need in you getting upset. I plan my visit. I'm only going to stay 45 minutes to an hour, and then I've got to go somewhere. I got to take the kids somewhere. I've got to, I got somewhere to go. So I'm not going to be there for an extended period of time to suffer through the abuse. So figure out what it is you need to do so that you can manage well and hold up under the circumstances. Then recognize too that it's not always all about you. When it comes to our emotions, we react as if we're the only person that a circumstance is important to. And it's not. We're not entitled to have a certain outcome. We're not entitled to be in a certain position. I've seen people, if they don't get the right seat at a meeting table, they're upset. It's not about you. It's about the topic at hand. People don't get listed on a roster of folks who contributed to something. It was an oversight. Don't overreact to those kinds of things, but recognize it's not always about you. And then watch yourself like a hawk. So take the 1,000-foot view. Pay attention to the little things that you do, how you react to them, what situations tick you off, what is it that you do that drives other people crazy. Pay attention from way back, step way back, because a lot of times we can't see ourselves closely if we're just in the moment. So allow your brain to have time to really think about how you respond to different situations. And one way to do that is to journal your emotions. If you take time to daily, weekly, I'm not a big journaler, so I would say I'll do it occasionally. But whatever rhythm works for you, if you process what happens to you nightly, then do that. But look at what those things are. Write them down, create an action plan for yourself. Remind yourself that certain situations cause you to feel a certain way or react a certain way, and keep a journal of it when it happens, especially when something kind of unusual happens, so that you can go back and look at it and be reminded of what situation caused you to respond a particular way. And then you can say, okay, if this ever happens again, here's what I can do differently to make a difference in the outcome of that situation. I love this quote by Mark Twain. It says, it's easier to fool people than convince them that they have been fooled. So one of the strategies is don't let a bad mood fool you. Sometimes we are in a really horrible mood and we make decisions that are not the best for us. So don't do that. If something horrible has happened to you in your life, that's not the time to make decisions. Funeral directors always tell people don't make big decisions after a death has happened to a close loved one. I'll say anything traumatic or emotional, if it's causing you to feel sad or depressed or melancholy, that's not the time to be making important decisions in your life. It's not the time to decide you want to break up with your spouse of 10 years or break up with your friends. That's not a good time. It's not a good time to make a business decision. So wait till that moment subsides and you can think more clearly. And then at the same time, don't let a good mood fool you either. A lot of times we're excited and we're happy because we got a promotion, and then we go out and buy a new car, and then we realize we didn't have any money for that. We really can't pay for that. Don't do that either. So be careful and be balanced in your decision making. Moods are just that. They come and they go, sometimes in seconds, and we're not best advised to make a decision about anything really important based on the mood we're in. Give yourself time to calm down and to think rationally. So back to that graph or that image I showed you several slides ago, give yourself, your sensory self, time to get past the emotion to the frontal lobe so you can make a good, balanced, rational decision. So, and then discover the source of your emotions. Ask yourself why you do the things you do. Many times we recognize we have emotion, we make decisions, we're experiencing frustration, anger, joy, but we don't ask ourselves why. What causes it? What is it really that makes you angry about a particular thing? I primarily am a diversity and inclusion consultant, and so I'm often in discussions that are very tense or sensitive for people. And sometimes, it doesn't happen often, but sometimes somebody will say something that makes me angry. And I have to step back from that and decide, why am I angry about it? And most of the time, it's related to something that happened to me when I was a kid, or something that happened really similar to what they're talking about. And it just brings up some history for me. And so now that I know that and I've taken the time to analyze that, the next time it happens, it doesn't bother me. So ask yourself why, because that's important. And then know if there's people who can help you get through something, understanding that when you figure out why, is there somebody who can come alongside you and help you get through and help you process that information too? So another strategy is to check your values and beliefs against what you say and do. We oftentimes will say, oh, I'm so honest, and then 5 seconds later you're telling that little white lie about something. Integrity is really important to me, but you stole a ream of paper from the office because you needed some at home. Or, it could be any number of things. And just make sure that if you say you value honesty, integrity, compassion, whatever it is, that actually lines up with what you say and do. Because people hear what you do more than what you say. And when there's a disconnect, that changes the impression about what people have about you, no matter what you might say you believe. So be aware of that. And then check yourself. How people perceive you can be very different than what you portray. So when you think about your comfort level, if you say you're really comfortable, but you are I also sing, and so I see people who say, oh, I love to sing, I love performing, but then I see them on the side of the stage before they go on, and they are shaking and just can't compose themselves. Well, you're probably not comfortable with that, even though you might like to sing. Your comfort level in an interview, your comfort level talking to your boss, your comfort level in front of children, they pick that up because there's something about how you look, your body language, something that comes across that says, I'm really not comfortable, even though I'm saying I am. Your mood, your facial expression, clothes, hair, body language, speech, tone of voice, all of that matters in terms of how you present yourself. And if your clothes are saying, I'm really successful, or your clothes can be saying, I'm really successful and I'm really calm and I'm really accomplished, but when you open your mouth, your tone of voice and your language says something else, that's a contradiction you want to manage, because people make assumptions about you, rightly or wrongly, based on how you come across. And some people have said to me, well, when you talk about that, that means people are policing my language. People are policing how I wear my hair. People are policing my clothing. Maybe they are. And that's on them. But what is it that you're trying to convey? Are you trying to convey competent, calm, accomplished, casual, fun-loving, whatever it is? Make sure that all of this lines up with what it is you're trying to say, with the emotional message you're trying to send. Make sure this lines up. Look beyond yourself. So if you are having trouble expressing your emotions or understanding your emotions, one of the things you might try is allowing yourself to experience other artists, whether it's through music or through painting or a photograph, poetry, a novel. Sometimes they can say it better than you can say it for yourself. I love movies, and so there'll be certain movie characters that will convey a feeling better than I can. I just recently went to see The Lion King, the new one. I've seen all of them multiple times. I told you my son was 25, so when I was pregnant with him, the original one came out, so I had to go see it again. And every time I see the scene where Rafiki takes Simba to the river and he's telling him, well, Mufasa comes in his spirit form and speaks to him, and he tells him, you know, remember who you are. It makes me cry every time. But besides that, I think about my own sons and what I want to tell them and what I want to convey to them. And Mufasa says it better than I ever could. And so when we get to that part and they're with me, I'm like, see, watch this part. Because I want them to know that no matter where they go, no matter what happens to them, I still love them. And I want them to remember where they came from so that they can live up to their potential. And so there may be things that you read that encourage you that you need to know about yourself, or there may be songs that say it better, those "You Done Me Wrong" songs. You might need to play one of those for your partner one time because they say it better. So just be thinking about that. Find your voice in the arts. Ask for feedback. So I'm not one that's really readily the kind of person that likes to ask for feedback because it just gives me the creeps to hear it. And so I'm emotionally self-aware that I have a problem asking for feedback, but I'm not emotionally mature enough to always handle it. So I think it's a great way to get to know more about yourself and how other people experience you, to be humble enough to ask for feedback about your interactions with other people, and then to take note of it. Ask people who are close to you what they see in you. How do you respond in anger? How do you respond in joy? Is my response to difficult things in my life helpful to our relationship or to certain situations, or is it harmful? And if it's harmful, what can I do to be better? If you want to improve, sometimes letting someone else in and letting them be your mirror is one of the more helpful ways for you to mature in your own emotional intelligence. And then recognize how you handle stress. The one in the front is my other baby. He's 20. Now look on his face. He is focused. The stress of being in a race propels him to go faster. Now look at that kid. He's a little bit stressed because he's behind. And so how do you handle stress in your own situation? Does the stress of, or the pressure of a situation help you to succeed? Does it propel you forward? Or does it immobilize you? Does it cause you to panic? Does it hinder you from accomplishing the goals that you have? Understanding that can help you create some strategies so that you can be successful at what you want to do. So know how you respond to stress. And then decide what you want to be known for and be that. I like this picture of these women because they all have different personalities. It's clear by what they wear, what they're wearing, and how they're standing and all of that. And they've decided who they are, and they're standing there proud and firm in it. When it comes to your reputation in the workplace, when it comes to the friends that you have, the people that are in your sphere of influence, Do they perceive you the way you want to be perceived? Is your brand clear? As a professional, is it clear? When people think about your work, are they saying that it's high quality? Are you known for being efficient? Are you known for being capable? Are you known for being forthright in the workplace? Are you known for always getting the job done, no matter what it takes? Are you known as the kind of person who can collaborate with anyone? Are you known for being the kind of person that can corral teams together to accomplish bigger goals? Whatever it is that you want to be known for, be that, and be it in a way that it's evident to everyone else around you. Understand what it takes for you in terms of emotional grit, what it takes for you in terms of sweat equity, what it takes for you to get there, and then go about being that. Because if people don't see it in you, if you have this image that you would like to portray or that you think you're portraying, but people don't get that at all, then there's probably some misperception in terms of your own emotional intelligence about how you show up in different spheres, whether it's work, personal, or home life. There's a disconnect. So decide what you want to be known for and then go about making that happen. So what I'd like to do at this point is a little partner discussion. So find 2 or 3 people and just talk about this for maybe, 5 minutes. Why is emotional intelligence important for your career or for your life? Why do you think it's important? What brought you here today? So take 5 minutes and talk about it real quick. Welcome back. I found this under here. I'm like, oh, toys. So thank you for taking time to talk about that. Anybody want to share one of the reasons why emotional intelligence is important for you? Yes.
I also can't manage it. I really good attention to work, but sometimes I think with my heart and then it comes out of my mouth and I want to try to control that.
Okay, all right. Now, this is not meant to insult, but when you said it, it just reminded me of something one of the older ladies at my church used to say when I was little, and it was, sweetie, everything that comes up doesn't need to come out. So maybe just plant that in the back of your head. But not just for you, that's kind of for all of us. But anyway, all right, anybody else? Yes.
I do fundraising, so it's a lot of relationship building with people, and so I know what my goals are and what I would envision their goals to be, but when I'm having these relationships, I need to make sure that I'm listening to what their focus is as well. Like, I know I really want to build a new dog run or whatever it might be, but if that's not what they're feeling, then I need to make sure to listen to that and find how they can help my organization too.
So that's great. And I think most of us, when we have an agenda of our own, we kind of want to run with it. And when we have, to her point in the back, when there's something that we feel like we just really have to get it out, we want to get it out. And I am so guilty of that myself. I've had that happen a number of times and had to remind myself of what the old church lady used to say. So I get it. And it's just, this next section is going to talk about self-management strategies. So hopefully some of those will help us all with that. The first one is just breathing. Science says that about 20% of our oxygen is used to supply the basic complex kinds of thinking and management of our emotions. And so if we're taking really shallow breaths, we're not getting it all. The first breath is going to go to making sure our heart's functioning, making sure, we can move our limbs, and we do all of that. But if we don't take the time to really deep breathe and give ourselves a chance to process and function, we're missing out, because all of the breath goes to maintaining your bodily function before it goes to thinking and act your intelligence management areas. So because of that, stand up, everyone. I'm going to count it out for you. Now, do you all know where your diaphragm is? So it's right underneath where your rib cage, the start of it. And when you breathe deeply, you should feel your diaphragm expand. So if you take a breath in, You should see your stomach should feel full and go out. When you release that, it should go in. So I'm going to count off 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in, hold it. 2, 3, 4, and then release. 1, 2, 3, 4. Got it? We'll do it 4 times. Okay. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. In. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4. You can have a seat. I'm only going to do it twice. But you get the idea. So the more often you do that, if you feel some stress or tension coming on through your day, just stop or go to the bathroom, go outside, kick back at your desk, and just take a few deep breaths, because that will give you more oxygen in your brain to be able to process complex feelings and thoughts. It'll give you time to slow down, too, before you respond. One of the other things you can do is make a list of what emotion is happening to you and what reason is happening to you. So if you have a decision you're trying to make, list on the one side the emotional reasons why you're trying to make this decision, and on the other side, list the rational things about that decision. Ask yourself, is there anything on the emotional side that might be clouding your perspective about the decision? On the rational side, ask yourself, is reason kicking in to the point where you're ignoring something that's critical from your emotions that would help you make that decision? So taking time just to say, normally we'll say, I'll make a list of pros and cons. I'm asking you to forget the pros and cons. Make a list of emotions versus reason to help you make the decision. The next thing you can do is tell other people about your goals, to have somebody hold you accountable. When we're trying to change behavior, a lot of what is entailed is about motivation. And one of the ways we can stay motivated is if we have a person that we let hold us accountable to a certain positive change we want to see in our life. So if there is a habit you're trying to break, if you get in meetings and you always have to talk first, or you always have to have the last word, have somebody hold you accountable for how many times you raise your hand, how many times you monopolize a conversation, and let them give you the feedback. Be humble enough to receive the feedback so that you can change that behavior. Because again, that'll help you self-regulate. It'll also help your relationship with others. Maintain your sanity. Don't let emotions take over. Recognize the symptoms. We talked earlier about recognizing what physically happens to you. If you start breathing more shallow and more quickly, whatever it is, if there are people, circumstances that are happening to you, maintain your sanity. Keep the peace. Don't let your job or people in your life make you crazy when you're under attack. Don't let people cause you to leave no doubt that you are nuts. Just take over. Try to maintain some peace in order in your life. And one of the ways to do that is to count to 10. You've probably heard this before, but what counting to 10 does is give you time to calm down and to make a rational decision, to let that sensory experience, whatever it is, get from your emotional place to your frontal lobe place so that you can think clearly. And so just stop and count to yourself in your head, or if you have to do it out loud, just count to 10. That'll give you time to regroup and make a rational decision about what to do. Sometimes we need to take more time than that. We need to sleep on it. So if you have a big, important decision to make, or there's an interaction that you know is going to be tense with somebody, if you can give it overnight, that gives you time to process it a little bit more. It gives you time to calm down, helps you to regain control of your emotions. Sometimes just giving space will help you to be able to make a better decision and have a more positive interaction with someone. If you're going to have a difficult or a crucial conversation, one of the strategies in that book, if you've ever read it, is to pre-plan the conversation. Write down what you're going to say, know what the issues are, state them with some care and some concern for the person, talk about how it made you feel, talk about what the consequences would be, but give yourself space to time and to plan that out, and space for that person also to prepare for those conversations. You don't want them to be heated, and giving space and time for that will help. One of the things we can do is sleep better. Most of us are attached. We have an extra appendage, be it phone, iPad, whatever. We're connected all the time. And so we are so dependent on our gadgets and our technology many times that it disrupts our sleep. So one of the strategies that helps with emotional balance is to unplug at least 2 hours before you go to sleep at night. Not just from your phone or from your computer, but from the television, podcast, radio, whatever it is, just unplug so that you can give your mind some downtime. And it's hard to do, but we need to do it. Another thing you can do, sunlight is a great way to recharge. They say that the morning sunlight is the best, so if you can get up and get 20 minutes of morning sunlight, that will help regulate you. The vitamin D in your body combined with the calcium helps regulate your body and give you a sense of calm, so that's another strategy you can use. How many are coffee drinkers or caffeinated beverage drinkers in here? Quite a lot. So I think I read a report that says coffee has a 6-hour half-life, caffeine does. And so if you have caffeine at 8 in the morning, 25% of it is still in your body at 8 o'clock at night. So if you're drinking multiple caffeinated beverages throughout the day, that's going to affect your sleep. So one of the things you want to do is manage your caffeine intake, and not just caffeine, but anything that causes you to be a little bit more on edge, even if it's for productive. I have some friends and colleagues who, they have a coffee on the way to work, they have a coffee when they get to work, they have a coffee over lunch, and then they have their afternoon 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock pick-me-up of coffee. I don't know how they function in terms of sleep, but they're always like, gotta be doing something. Hey, I'm always happening. It's always happening. So that interrupts your sleep, though. So be aware of that and try to manage that, because sleep is necessary for us to have good mental acuity and emotional balance. So make sure you're getting your sleep. Talk to somebody who's more skilled at self-management than you are. So you probably see people around your office or your neighborhood who seem to have a better sense of calm and collectedness, who are always compassionate and attentive when they talk to people, who are patient, who never seem to be rattled by anything. Talk to one of those persons and ask them, how do you manage your emotions so well? What skills can I try? Let them be your mentor when it comes to emotional intelligence. Ask them if they would walk with you for a month or 2 or 6, however long it might take, for you to learn from them and learn how to model some of the skills and behaviors that they have. Smiling a lot and laughing more is another way to manage your stress levels. When the research scientists say that when you laugh, that there are muscles in your face that actually tell your brain that you're happy and you're experiencing some joy. So if you can think of something funny when you're in the midst of an emotional crisis, then that'll signal and shift your brain's response and your emotional response. Or if you can read a funny story before you go into a tense meeting, or if my dad used to read the comics every day. I never really knew why. He probably didn't either. He just liked them. But it could be related to this particular tactic around emotional intelligence, of signaling to your brain that there's something to be happy about, which relieves the stress so that you can interact better with the people around you. You can watch, I think that's part of the reason comedies are so popular on television. You can watch those because laughing changes our mood. Staying positive. So one of my former friends used to always say, your attitude determines your altitude in life. So if you can stay positive, however you do that, if it's through prayer, meditation, having a time out, going to the beach, doing whatever kind of mindfulness thinking you might need to do, however you can be calm and put yourself in a positive space. Doing that will also help you be better able to control your emotional experiences and how you display emotion, and that'll put you in a better place in terms of dealing with other people. Another thing you can do is take time every day to think about your problems. Carving out some time is really important. So again, that's one reason why you need to unplug from all your devices and unplug from people sometimes too, and give yourself space to analyze what issues, what concerns might be going on in your life. Bill Gates is known for taking think days and think weeks, and every year I think he takes 2 weeks where he just unplugs just so he can think about solutions to some of the concerns that are in his life. And it's said that every day he takes an hour to unplug and think about solutions to problems. The former CEO, I can't remember his name right now, of GE does the same thing. He takes an hour every day to think about solutions to problems. And if we can find, even if it's just 15 minutes, to explore, to not worry about something, but just decompress in your day, that will help you to be better able to manage what's happening emotionally in your life. And then manage your self-talk. We spend a lot of time telling ourselves all sorts of negative things. If we did something that we shouldn't have done, even if it's we dropped a glass in the kitchen, oh, I'm such an idiot, I'm such a klutz. If we say something wrong to a person that we care about deeply, oh, I'm so mean, I'm so cruel, I'm just an idiot, I shouldn't have done that. And we tell ourselves all these negative things. If we don't like the way we look in a dress or in a suit, I'm so fat, I'm the fattest person on the face of the earth, I wish I could die. We say these things internally and it doesn't help us. Scientists say that we have 50,000 thoughts every day that we're going back and rehashing over and over again. And there's a chemical response in our brain when we have these negative thoughts and also when we have positive ones. So we want to make sure that when we're having thoughts that we're producing positive feedback for ourselves so we can have the positive chemical reaction and not the negative one. Because again, you don't want to wind up in a spiral of negativity because that shows up in how you relate to people. It comes out as negative emotion. It comes out as that kind of person I described before, the person that's like a bull in a china shop who has no boundaries, the person who has no empathy for anyone else. So making sure that you speak positively to yourself and affirm what's going on in your life. So if you drop the glass, next time I'll be more careful rather than beat yourself up for it. If you say something negative to a colleague, I'm going to go apologize to them and I'm going to do better the next time, rather than always beating yourself up for the negative. State the truth and then move on. See yourself as successful. Our brains are wired such that when we visualize something, a successful thing in our life, our brain has a hard time telling the difference between what we see and what we visualize. So if you make a habit of visualizing positive things, visualizing yourself doing really well in an interview, visualize yourself making a killer presentation, visualizing yourself having a really tough, hard conversation with a friend or a colleague, but the outcome of it being really positive, one that you can move forward from. If you visualize these positive experiences, your brain responds to that and logs that in your memory. And so when you get into the situation for real, that'll be a memory. It's kind of like muscle memory, where your responses in the moment will be similar to the positive outcome that you visualize, the positive behaviors that you visualize. So visualize, see yourself successful. And then focus on what you have rather than what we don't. A lot of times we spend years, in some cases, bemoaning the fact that we don't have certain material things. We think about jobs that we could have had, and we spend years saying, well, I should have had that job, or if I had just done this, I would be in that I should have all that money. I should have that house. I should have, we spend all this I should have, rather than being grateful for what we do have, grateful for the little things, grateful for the big things, grateful that we have a job rather than the alternative, grateful that we have a place to live. Gratitude opens up our hearts to more positive experiences, and we start to see the good and the positive in others as well as ourselves, and then we operate out of that because we're in a more positive place. So be grateful and be thankful for what you have rather than what you don't. And then maintain synchronicity. This goes back to the awareness skill that I talked about earlier when I talked about check yourself and your facial expressions, your body movements and body tone versus what you say. So a lot of times we'll say, oh, well, I feel really good about this decision. I can't wait to get started on this project. But there's something in your body language that is saying just the opposite. So when people experience you, they feel like you're not telling the truth or that you didn't really mean what you say. So if you want to manage your own self, your own emotions, make sure that what you say lines up with what you portray. What you're doing and what you're saying and how you look, all are sending the same message in it, and that is a message you want to send. Talk to somebody you trust who's not vested in your outcome. So if you're working on career things and you're trying to figure out, what the right move is or what the right conversation is to have with your superior or with another departmental manager that you want to get into, make sure you're talking to somebody you trust, because sometimes we'll have those conversations with people who aren't trustworthy, who might be competitors for you, or who might stab you in the back because they know your weakness. Be careful about that, first of all. So make sure that you trust them. Make sure that you're getting input from people who you've given permission to tell you the truth. So you can't say, oh, I want to hear what you have to say, and then they tell you, and you're like, well, I don't know why you would say that, or you're really upset about it, because that doesn't serve either of you well. You've confused the person because you asked for the feedback, and then you're upset because they gave it to you. But then you're not really receiving it. So you're, again, not high IQ because you can't receive the feedback that somebody's trying to give you. So finding someone who you trust to help you manage your emotions better. It takes a lot of self-awareness and humility to be able to do that, but it's something you want to do. And then know that there's something to learn from every situation. So even when you screw up, learn from it. If you've said something that is horrible, apologize, learn from it. The journaling practice I talked about earlier will help you be aware of it, and then figure out, with that, noting down what happened so you're aware, figure out what you can do differently the next time. So if a situation happens where you have a coworker or an employee of yours that you need to give some guidance on a particular behavioral issue, or their performance just isn't quite what it needs to be technically, make sure that if you say it wrong, that you've learned from that. Ask them for feedback too, so that they can tell you how you could have said it better, how you could have done it better, so that the next time you learn from it and you grow and you are able to manage a situation like that better. And then recharging your mind. Take time out for the physical activity that you need. Get exercise. Biologists and physicians talk about how when we exercise that we get this boost of serotonin and some other chemical in the brain that helps us to stay more positive and be more clear. They actually now know that exercise actually increases our capacity to think clearly and be less emotional and stressed and reactive. So exercise is a good thing, not just to lose weight or not just to gain muscle mass, but also to help you think better mentally and balance your emotions. So make sure that you're doing that. So I want to have you do this exercise. I think you have some paper or something to write on. You have a pen, I know, from DreamBank. So whether you want to do this mentally or just write it down, be honest and think about the people you work with and write down the names of the 2 or 3 people that you like the most. And I'm not talking about who work the best. I'm really saying the people that you like the most. As leaders and coworkers, when it comes to emotional intelligence, We need to know how other people perceive us and what we think, what our emotions are around the people we work with, whether we like them or we don't, and how our interactions with them show up. And when you get done with those people you like the most, also write down 2 or 3 people who you like the least that you work with. And so again, not just about productivity, but really their personalities. The 3 people you like the best, the 3 people you like the least. 2 or 3, and if you have a small group, then maybe just 1. And now think about what subtle messages you might be sending to the people on the bottom of the list that may communicate that you don't like them as much as you like some of their coworkers. So think about that. What are you subtly communicating? And if you don't want to write it down, again, just log it in your brain. Make sure you take these papers home with you. All right, you all got that? I'm going to flip to the next slide. There's more questions. Okay, so the first thing I want to ask you, is there a difference in the amount of time you spend in casual conversation with the people who you like the most versus the people who you like the least? Is there a difference? Yes, yes. Okay. Is there a difference in your body language when you relate to the people who you like the most versus the people you like the least? Okay, and is there a difference in the mental chatter you experience about the people on the bottom of the list? And by that I mean, oh my God, here comes Judy. What am I going to do now? Okay, so now that you have put these people in these different categories, what can you do based on the strategies we talked about, and some you may have of your own? What can you do to have a positive experience with the people you like the least? What can you do so that you manage your body language, your mental chatter, your tone of voice, your engagement? What emotional intelligence skills can you use to have those interactions be better, to decrease the negative mental chatter? Yes. Pardon? Be open-minded. Yep. What do you mean when you say that?
Because you have subtly, you have a feeling that the person is a bother or you don't like a person that much, but when they are approaching you, you just think of what food are they bringing.
Okay. All right, that's great. Thank you. Anybody else? What can you do to change your response to make it a more positive experience? Yes.
Smile a little more when they're around,
So she said smile a little more when they're around.
just to kind of change my mood.
Yes, so we learned that smiling helps the brain think differently. So you change your mood so you feel more positive when they're around. Yes.
Prep yourself for that interaction.
Okay, what if they just kind of walk down the hallway and you
Here
just...
we go. I can handle this.
Okay, all right, good. So positive self-talk, yes.
I say to uplift or to self-empower the person.
How would you do that?
Just go have a positive attitude, look at their weaknesses, and be willing to work with them to show how they can improve.
Okay, that's great. And so one thing I would say too is recognize that it might not be them, it might be you. Mm-hmm. You might be the one with the problem. So recognize that too and shift accordingly. Who else? Yes.
Sometimes I do this where I have like a little mantra for that mental chatter of like empathy in some way. So my grandma used to always say like, it's harder to be them than be around them. And so sometimes I'll have that going through my head, like it's as hard for them to be them as it is to be around difficult people, and that should be kind.
Okay, did you all hear that? Okay, great, that's good. Harder to be them than to be around them.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be too, it's harder for them to be around you
Yeah.
than it is for them to be you.
Yes.
So
It goes both.
it goes both ways. Anything else? All right, so as you wrote down your list, I would challenge and encourage you to think about those people who are on the bottom of your list, why they might be on the bottom of your list. Think about whether it's you or whether it's them or a combination thereof, and really work on, today when you go back to the office, tomorrow and next week, changing your perspective about your experience with them. Practice some of these strategies and see if it will make a difference in your relationship. Because the goal for you is not to have other people think that you're emotionally intelligent, but for you to be it and for you to know it so that you can have good relationships with the people who are in your sphere of influence and that you can manage social situations better. And then that way, you won't have to worry about what people think about you because they'll just know that you're a pleasant and emotionally stable person to be around. So one other area I wanted to talk about, which is a little more sensitive, is knowing what bias you have. I just named a few of them here: racism, ageism, genderism, and sexism, and then that they lead to discrimination and harassment. So for yourself, be aware of the bias that you might have. We all have some of some kind. Some of them are based in past history or experience. Some of them are based in, just perspectives that are floating around out there that you've latched onto. Try to dig into that and understand what's causing it, because that helps you to be more emotionally intelligent and more influential, more inclusive. And if you want to win friends and influence people, you need to be able to embrace people and not have the, oh my gosh, here comes so-and-so experience, but dig in, like this gentleman said, and get to know them and think positive and have a positive experience with them. So understand where your bias might lie to avoid the problems of discrimination, harassment, or preferential treatment. Because that happens too. I know for me, when I like someone a lot, I probably default to giving them more of my time, more favors, because they're easier for me to get along with. That's a bias, just a they're like me bias. But somebody else can be completely different. That doesn't make them less valuable or less interesting or less productive to the organization. I just have to figure out a better way to engage with them. And so taking the time to figure that out is really important. And then know that change is going to happen. If you're in the workplace, things are going to happen. People are going to get laid off. Companies are going to lose money. Reorganizations or restructures are going to happen. Bosses will change. Job functions will change. And you need to prepare for that. So don't let it catch you by surprise, because you can prepare for these things ahead of time. If you're paying attention to what your business does and how they're doing in their particular industry, you can see if things are going bad in the textile industry that perhaps you might need to prepare for a move. And so don't let that catch you off guard, because that can cause an emotional, stressful situation that can be very traumatic. I used to be a career coach, and almost all of the people that I coached who were let go from their jobs, they knew something was wrong before the person ever came to them and said, "You're out of here." Don't let it catch you off guard, because when they came to me, they were at some of the lowest places in their life they had ever been. And so my job was to rebuild confidence and rebuild skills and help them get employment, which we were able to do. But you don't have to be in that place. You can read the handwriting on the wall, see the signs, so that you can prepare yourself emotionally, whether it's a relationship, friendship, whether it's a work situation. Look for the signs. Know that change is going to come and be prepared for it when it happens. And then it is your move. Emotional intelligence is a popular thing to talk about right now in workplaces and in community forums and spaces. But just because it's popular doesn't mean everybody's going to do it, should do it, or has to do it. It's up to you. I think it's a good thing to make sure that you're aware of how you show up and what impact you have on others. But it's up to you to decide what that means to you. It's up to you to say, I'm going to work on myself for the better, and to try and have more positive interactions with people and circumstances. So decide that you're going to do that. And once you've got it, I always believe that if you know something, especially if you're in leadership, you need to teach somebody else. So each one reach one and each one teach one. So with that, I would just ask you to tell me, we've got a couple of minutes, one thing that stuck out to you about what we've talked about today, or one skill that you have tried in your own life that you want to share with somebody else, or one thing that you know you're going to go out and try today. Anybody? Yes.
I liked how you talk about the list of like
Could you, for our online
your list of emotion versus reason, and
Okay.
how you talked about like not to really devalue like the emotional side, but also to address how your reason, you can learn also from your emotions to make like a like an impactful decision and a good decision. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else? There's a hand over here.
One of the first things I wrote down was,
We're recording it.
all right, check your values and beliefs against what you do and say. And what came into my head was social media, because I think there's a huge potential for people to completely misunderstand who we think we are, who we really are in person, but how we respond to people via, like, in writing versus what you would say to somebody to their face. Then these people that don't know you get this impression that can totally misrepresent who you think you are and who you want to be, but you just give off the wrong impression. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it doesn't matter how many emojis you throw into your writing on social media, somebody is going to still misinterpret it. So that's a good point to make. Anybody else? Yes.
I really appreciate the strategy you gave us for not letting a bad mood fool you, because I know I've been in situations where I was in a bad mood and I saw it one way, and then the same situation when I was in a good mood looked completely different. So I think we all can experience that. When we are in a bad mood, somebody looks really bad to us, or a situation looks really bad to us, and we have to kind of talk ourselves out of it and say, all right, you're in a bad mood today. Here you go again, judging the situation not from the right perspective. Let's just leave this and come back to it when you're in a better mood. So that was good.
Thank you. That's really important. Anyone else? Any questions anybody has? Yes.
I think one thing.
Hold on one second.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you. I think one important thing with emotional intelligence is to learn how to handle fear and discomfort, because in order to progress and to move forward in our lives, we're always going to have to deal with fear and discomfort, because in order to have progress, pain is something that makes us grow. Discomfort is something that makes us grow. Conflict is something that we cannot avoid, and that is something we have to totally embrace instead of run away from. So that is something that I think that would be a good addition to this program as well, because often times we think, things are going on in the workplace and we need to be quiet about this. We don't want to make waves and so forth, and to keep the status quo. But in order to improve and to make forward progress, we're always going to have to bring up conflict. And so I am very grateful that you're doing this, and you made a lot of good points. This whole presentation is good in general. However, I think there should be some improvement as far as that we should admit conflict. So like I always have a positive message for people, is that this is very good, but I would also like to see that conflict resolution or how to deal with those type of things as well.
Thank you for sharing that. I think what you bring up around fear is really important, and fear can be very immobilizing for people. So understanding how we react in moments of fear and challenge and conflict is super important. So thank you for sharing that.
Okay, you're welcome.
Anybody else? I usually do talk about it. I forgot. So it's all good. Anybody else? Any more questions? All right. Well, thank you for coming. I appreciate you taking time to be here.